Hello and welcome to the latest TMT Talks with me, Oisin Lunny, produced by the team at TMT Analysis. Now, this episode, we're going to be discussing the big topic of A2P SMS and ask why, after so many years, it is still growing in popularity. And I'm really delighted to be joined by the expert in all things mobile and roaming and the new director of programs at the wonderful Mobile Ecosystem Forum, James Williams. James, a very big welcome to TMT Talks. How are you?
Fantastic. Lovely to be here with you, and great to be here on TMT Talks.
Wonderful. Great to have you here. Okay, so let's go back to basics. Start at the very, very beginning. For any of the folks who are watching and need a refresher or would like to know a bit more, could you just explain what is A2P SMS and why is it so important?
No problem. So let's take it bit by bit. What is A2P? A2P means application to person or application to peer. And in simple language, that's everything that a communication from one individual to another isn't. So if we're talking about an external business, it could be the government sending you COVID-related communications. It could be a charity, any external organization communicating with you. So business to consumer, or of course it could be business to business, that is A2P. And then SMS is text messaging. But then is it? Because if you talk to a lot of people out there about text messaging, they automatically think that's SMS. But actually, we need to get this right because text messaging encompasses more than just SMS. It also includes over-the-top channels such as WhatsApp, Viber, Line, Telegram, Signal, and every other type of OTT there is out there. So it's a very broad area, but A2P SMS is super specific.
Absolutely. And it's an area that's grown from the, humble SMS, which was this, very short character, a short message service. And it's really evolved, as you say, into all these OTT services, these platforms with billions and billions of users like WhatsApp, etc. But how did you actually get into the field of SMS? Because it's very specific and you're a real expert in the field. What was your career path like from the early days to now?
It was an accident. It was totally by accident. The best things in life often are. So I did European business and German at university. In my first year, I had industrial placement. And in my third year, I had a placement, and that would be in Germany. And I thought, what kind of companies are there where I could have a placement in my first year and the third year and really big? I can use my German, my other languages. And I thought, you know what? Siemens would be absolutely fantastic. And I was able to secure a placement in my first year at uni with Siemens and ended up in the world of telecoms more or less from the get-go. And in the third year, I was working at my studies and had my 21st birthday in Munich. That was amazing. Loved the place. And I was actually working at their HQ in Munich on the public communications network side of things. And I got a job with them. Then I was picked up by a company called Converse Technologies. That's Converse with an M. And at that time, back in 1998, they were the largest SMSC, so that's the actual infrastructure that powers SMS communications globally. They were the largest provider of SMS infrastructure, but mainly voice messaging as well. And then I was really voice messaging at that point. And then 2008 onwards, so for the past 12, 13 years, I've moved into SMS. And for about the past 8 or 9 years, I've really focused on this whole area of business to consumer communications. And SMS is the central pillar and linchpin. So I've been in telecoms basically all my working life.
People have been kind of predicting the demise of the text message, the demise of the mobile message, and predicting all kinds of video calls will take over or whatever. That hasn't happened. It seems to me like last week I got all the most important messages I got in the world, like a vaccine update, a bank one-time passwords. The most important ones came by text message, whether that's on one of the OTT platforms or by, good old SMS. Why do you think that text messaging continues to grow from strength to strength, James? What's your take, your insider's take on it?
It's dead simple because we all understand it. We've all used it. We all use it. And by all, I mean absolutely everyone. So I actually bought my mum is now 83. I bought her a Samsung smartphone for Christmas. And before then, she'd had her old Nokia and she was actually a demon SMS texter. And now she's getting rather too good with WhatsApp. So come on, if my mum, who really is a technophobe, and it was unbelievable when I got her first computer, and this is a mouse, look at me with my wireless mouse, high tech. Sorry, wired mouse, should I say, high tech. But when I got a mouse, what's a mouse? She didn't even understand that. But now even she is so well versed in texting. And the fact of the matter is there are 67% of the world have a mobile phone. So that's 2/3 of the world have a mobile phone. And you think of every type of mobile phone, whether it's a feature phone or a smartphone, all are SMS enabled. So that's over 5 billion people that can receive SMS. And then you think of then the 2 billion people who have access to WhatsApp. And then you think of WeChat in China, which is a billion people basically there. And you think of all the other OTTs. It's just something we know and are familiar with. And we actually don't think about it. We just use it. And the real killer thing about SMS, and you can really view it as a killer app, is that when we receive a text message or an SMS, we're duty bound to look at our phone with that beep and the flash. We all have that. With email, it's definitely not the same. And when you've got 98% of SMS actually being read, so if I actually receive an SMS, 98% are actually read, the majority within 3 minutes. You look at the stats for email, and that's barely a quarter of emails are actually ever read.
Well said, well said. As Carl Whitfield said once, SMS is the language of over 5 billion people, and you've really summed it up there. I also like the fact that, exactly as you said, it comes pre-installed on every phone. Nobody actually needs any training on how to receive and send an SMS. It's just instinctive. And also, I think the asynchronous nature of text messaging back and forth really suits our busy lifestyles. We don't necessarily want to be kind of glued to our phone at a time that we don't plan to have an interaction. Say if we get a text message about a COVID vaccination or a bank transfer, we can look at it when we want, we can reply when we want. The asynchronous nature just dovetails perfectly with our busy lifestyles. But coming back to the pandemic, obviously it's been it's been a very unusual year, shall we say. There's been lots of challenges, there's been lots of circumventing the challenges. And I think text messaging has been a big part of this in terms of mobilizing people, getting them to get their vaccinations, keeping them up to date on what's happening. What other changes have you seen in the landscape that are connected to our pandemic and the lockdowns? The SMS has really been a cut-through technology.
Well, first of all, what I would say about the pandemic, you remember, Oisin, not so many years ago, you heard about massive digital transformation programs. Companies like Siemens. I remember when I started with Siemens, it had 360,000 employees. And I'm going back to when I was 21. So that's getting on for 30 years ago. So it's a huge corporation. So there's these massive corporations. And you've got so many different ways of communicating with people. But when you look out there across the board, SMS, as we've talked about already, is absolutely used by everyone. Now, when I say everyone, I'm not talking individuals as well. I'm talking organizations. Now, one statistic people can't get their heads around, and most people don't know, is that 99% of businesses out there are small and medium sized. 99%. When you and when we go to conferences, trade fairs, I saw you at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, everyone talks about the huge enterprises. Everyone talks about the Google, the Amazons, the Fords, the Siemens of the world. But the majority of businesses are smaller. And digital transformation, this is the key thing for me in the pandemic, has become something real. It's become something tangible, not by a bunch of suits where you're spending a lot of money for some real nice long multi-year programs. This has had to be done rapidly within the space of days and weeks, to actually make sure businesses and organizations can survive and that we as consumers and individuals receive the services we expect. And that's what SMS has done. SMS is at the lowest common denominator when it comes to mobile engagement because you don't need a smartphone, you don't need a computer, you don't need the internet, wireless broadband, you don't need any of that. And SMS works. So any organization out there looking to communicate with their client base, of course their employees as well, don't forget that SMS is fantastic for employee communications. SMS is like a convoy. It has to go as fast as the slowest ship. SMS is that channel. So it's, from my perspective, digital transformation for real for organizations of any shape or size.
100%. I think that's a great way to look at it. It's really, forced us to embrace the digital transformation that's been so important for the major enterprises like Siemens, as you say. But SMS is kind of digital transformation for everybody, full stop, employees, customers, partners, etc. But coming to the consumer point of view, now there was some statistic from McKinsey, I think it was, that said the e-commerce market accelerated by something like 10 years worth of growth in the space of 1 or 2 quarters last year, just as the lockdown started landing in various places. And people, of course, they couldn't go out shopping, so they had to turn to their online friends and portals and shops and start doing business there and buying stuff online. What do you think was the role of SMS in this consumer digital transformation? What did you see there?
I think SMS for me really is the glue. And as we mentioned before, it's unobtrusive. It's just there. It's by default there on people's devices. And I think I go back to May, and I work for the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, and we put together actually a digital transformation related event. Day one was all about personal data and digital identity, which is what TMT is all about. Day two was the world of payments, and day three was the world of messaging. And the three of those link together seamlessly, really, to form one big solution. And you were talking about e-commerce. Any e-commerce company out there needs to be able to securely digitally onboard someone to make sure that they know really that that person is who they say they are, so knowing your customer. And then with ongoing transactions, and indeed me as a customer, I want to feel valued. And those communications have to be personalized. And of course, the payment side of things need to be taken care of, whether it's a credit card, a debit card, it could be PayPal, it could be any Alibaba Pay, Alipay Pay, it could be anything, whatever I use to pay for my goods or services. All of those three really merge together seamlessly. So SMS messaging underpins so much of e-commerce today in terms of the onboarding, the two-factor authentication, the ongoing transactions, the ongoing building up that loyalty, and of course the day-to-day, just keeping people updated with special offers.
You kind of touched upon something there that I think is really interesting, and I heard your the CEO of MEF at an event where I met Fergal from TMT. It was in Mobile World Congress, a kind of side event that was that happened in place of the cancelled event last year in 2020, and it was all about identity and the role of mobile phones in terms of people's identity. And I think it's quite interesting that for things like one-time passwords in banking and kind of two-factor authentication if you're logging into your social networks or email, all of this stuff happens via mobile messaging more and more. What role do you think that mobiles have in this crossover of our identity? Because you can kind of mention it's something that's very, close to our hearts. We really, there's a phobia. If you don't have your phone, there's something called nomophobia, which is a fear of being without your mobile phone. It's a medical condition. So this is very important. This is not a small issue. But talk to us about the overlap between mobile devices and our actual identity and our digital selves.
Well, I think for me, over the past 5 years, I've really seen the importance of your mobile number increase. So those of you watching this, you may have an identity card system. So you may have your identity card, which you've got to carry around with you. Here in the UK, we don't have that. But we have passports. We have our national insurance numbers. And if I'm signing up for a new service, or if I'm having to prove my identity, and of course driving licenses as well, then sending a scan of your passport, sending a scan of your driving license, for example, is something that's requested. But increasingly, it's that phone number, it's that two-factor authentication. So I would say actually your phone number is getting just as important as your passport or your national insurance number or driving license number now. I would really say that in terms of importance and what's used by organizations out there for onboarding you. And that will just continue to increase. And for many people, you look at so many people out there, they've had the same number for so many years, myself included. And that actually on its own is a really, really great, important guide to show that actually that person is who they say they are. If you can really, truly verify that that number is James Williams, and he just happens to have had his mobile phone number for 10 years or more, then that nugget of information on its own, never mind anything else, is a great way of proving my identity.
Oh, absolutely. I remember once I was over in Austin, Texas, paying for a South by Southwest upgrade, and I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize in a different country. And of course, I ignored it because I ignore every phone call from a number I don't recognize. But then I got a text message saying, hey, this is your credit card. Are you making this transaction? Reply yes or no. And that was like instantly, okay, I know what it is. I know what they want. I'm happy to reply. My credit card went through. It was just perfect. So I think this, in terms of the consumer experience of mobile number verification, mobile identity verification, one-time passwords checking, payment authorization, etc., it feels like VIP service if it arrives by a mobile message. If it arrives by a random phone call from, a number in God knows where, it tends to be ignored. And also it's that asynchronous versus synchronous nature of the transaction. So I just wanted at this stage to give a little shout to the wonderful folks at TMT Analysis, because they have some fantastic resources available on their website, all about how mobile number intelligence can be used to help companies globally do everything from communicate more effectively with their customers to preventing fraud while onboarding, a very important process. So have a look at their website at tmtanalysis.com, which includes some dedicated use cases, which all I gathered on one page, and it's very, very well worth a look. So fantastic. So kind of coming away from the analysis of the tech side of things for a moment, tell us a bit about your newish role at the wonderful Mobile Ecosystem Forum. What does the Director of Programs do, and what have you got lined up?
Well, I'm responsible for the Future of Messaging program with MEF, and I also look after the mobile payment side of things. So MEF has got about 130 members, approximately 2/3 are members of what's called the Future of Messaging program. And you think of anything messaging, whether it's SMS or it's RCS or any other mobile engagement channel you can think of. We've got so many business messaging companies, enterprises, and other organizations interested in that area, members of MEF focused on those bits. And those are the areas I look after. So I'm looking after really the messaging side of MEF. So that's a perfect fit for me as well, and the mobile payment side of things. And I've really seen, hence I mentioned earlier, that more or less seamless link between identity, payments, and messaging. The three really roll together.
We actually have a special Spotify playlist for our VIP guests on TMT Talks, and it's called TMT Tracks. And at this stage of our interview, I would like to invite you to choose a track or some tracks to contribute to our amazing Spotify playlist, so we can turn it up to 11.
Well, I could think of many tracks, but I won't be greedy, Oisin. For once, I won't be when it comes to this. My 90s or my early noughties music, my tunes, I'll just stick to one. And okay. This came out in 1996. And at that time, I remember I was bombing around in my hire car around the Highlands of Scotland, around the UK, helping, it was loads of whisky distilleries bring their new phone systems into service, doing the training. And I remember with my little cassette in my hire car, and I remember one of my favorite tunes was Robert Miles' Children from his Dreamland album in 1996. It's, for me, timeless and ageless. And it brings back those amazing times I had for that year or two, just driving around, seeing some amazing people, seeing some amazing places around here in the UK and actually Ireland as well. And I had a fantastic time doing that. So that tune really brings those amazing days back. It seems like yesterday, but it's half my life ago. So Robert Miles' Children from his album Dreamland, released in 1996.
Oh, superb. I'm getting goosebumps just hearing that story and thinking about that track. That's a beautiful soundtrack. And, you know, given you were working with whiskey distillers, I'm impressed that you can remember so much. It's that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But what a dream job to have.
It was
Fantastic.
absolutely lovely, and I keep myself to this day because I visited every single United distillery in the UK and elsewhere. And you can buy a manager's edition bottle of whiskey, but only from the distillery when you visit. I never did. And very few people would have that full range from all the distilleries, but I never did. So, but there we go. Like many things, hindsight's a wonderful thing.
I can imagine you there, Robert Miles on the stereo, on the cassette tape, thinking, sure, I'll pick up a manager's edition next time I come back. And, you know, there you go. Life happens. But I'd say you're a good man to go for a whiskey tasting with. So a little mental note there to myself, I think. And so that's all we have time for on TMT Talks. I just wanted to thank you so much, James Williams, for joining us. That's been a brilliant chat, some great memories there, and a great take on the importance of mobile messaging. So thank you for joining us.
And Oisin, thank you very much for having me as a guest. And TMT Talks, thank you for having me.
Awesome. So listen, viewers, thank you so much for joining us on TMT Talks for our deep dive into all things mobile with James Williams from the Mobile Ecosystem Forum and much more. Don't forget, you can carry on the conversation by using the hashtag TMT Talks online. And you can also email me at ushin@tmtanalysis.com, or please post a comment on the TMT Analysis YouTube channel. You can also carry on the party via our special TMT Analysis mixtape, as we mentioned, now with added extra Robert Miles, and it's called TMT Tracks, and it's linked below this video. Be sure to listen in, and I will see you next time. But in the meantime, have a great day and keep it locked to TMT Talks.